Well, we are officially underway for the card reveals for the Return of Naxxramas mini set. So we did have PC Gamer put out an article showcasing a neutral legendary. So let's talk about that real quick. This is the Rivendare War Rider. Again, neutral legendary, 6 mana, 6/6 undead. With the Death Rattle, shuffle the other three horsemen into your deck. Each of the three horsemen basically has a different effect, but they all have the same Death Rattle. And that Death Rattle is if you had all four horsemen die this game, you destroy the enemy hero. So huge, like kind of end game win condition. Um, each of them are the 6 mana 6/6. They all have the undead tag and that same Death Rattle. One has taunt, one has rush, and the other one has lifesteal. So they are, have a slightly different effect here, but kind of an interesting effect, I guess. I have heard some people suggest things to try to capitalize on this and actually pull off the combo. I don't know how consistent or effective some of those will be. The one I've definitely heard is in Shaman with the card that pulls minions out of your hand for 10 mana. I don't know. I don't know how consistent that's going to be. That still feels a little slow. Some of these things are always kind of meta dependent. And the big issue for me with trying to pull something like that off is making sure that you actually consistently draw all of these so that you can get them out as kind of quickly as possible to start having them die for that Death Rattle effect. So I think for me, looking at this initially, this kind of feels like a fun deck, maybe like a fun card, fun win condition. Probably pretty fringe though, unless people can figure out a way to really pull this off consistently. So I don't know. Individually, maybe you kind of just still want to play these and see. I definitely think these couple that kind of the rush and maybe lifesteal are impactful. Rush, of course, impacts the board immediately. So yeah, absolutely. Definitely the one that you want there. But pretty interesting card. And now we have been getting more reveals. So we have posted all on the Twitter. It's all on Twitter outside of that one for the PC Gamer. And they started off with some neutrals. So we have the Lost Exarch, a 4 mana 5/4 undead. Death Rattle, spend all your mana, summon that many 2/2 zombies with Rush. This one is kind of interesting because it's not like using your extra mana to summon some extra bodies does seem pretty sweet. They have that Rush, so it impacts the board immediately. And they are going to have that undead tag as well. It's not corpses. So, it's going off of mana. So, like, any class can use this as a neutral card. And you don't have to worry about some, like, additional mechanic on top of it. I don't know how I feel about this. I think this one's actually somewhat okay. But I don't like the fact that it's a Death Rattle, which I know is kind of the thing. But, like, it feels really weird as a Death Rattle to me. I think if this is a battle cry, right, you get to maybe play that on turn 6 as a battle cry. You spend your other 2 mana to get some bodies out on the board. But with this being a Death Rattle, your opponent has more control over when this could potentially happen, unless you specifically put it in a deck or have a way to actually like trigger that Death Rattle effect yourself. And then you still have to like play this, trigger the Death Rattle yourself, and still have remaining mana left over to get additional bodies. So feels a little bit weird. I'm really curious to see how people use it. Maybe there's some sort of combo that you could do with this, maybe in Warlock. As of right now, I'm not really thrilled about that one. Next, we have Thaddeus. Of course, you gotta have the Thaddeus monstrosity. 10 mana, 11/11 undead with taunt. And your odd cost cards cost 1. Pretty powerful effects. It is that 10 mana though, so I don't know, kind of slow. But it does swap polarity each turn. There is kind of a boss fight in World of Warcraft that uses this effect, and it does alternate. So then the other side would be your even cost cards cost 1 when when it flips that polarity. This is going to be ugly when I think it's like evolved into. I'm not really sure if people are going to start including this in decks though, but could be a pretty fun card. The fact that it has taunt is huge, I think. That's kind of the big thing, right? This is just, I mean, what can you say other than this is a mistake? What is happening in this picture? I kind of like it though. It's a 1 mana 1/3 all types, so it is effectively an amalgam. It doesn't feel like we've had an amalgam quite like this before. So this is very interesting, but the 1 mana 1/3 I feel like has historically always been a pretty strong stat line, and if this has all effects, this potentially could be in quite a few decks. I mean, we've seen a rise in things like the Unholy Death Knights more recently. Even in some other undead decks, we've seen things like this be very powerful in the past for like beasts, specifically for like Hunter. We've seen this stat line be really good for druids with aggro druid lists. So this being an all, all minion type is going to be very, very interesting. And I definitely think that people will play this one. So is it really a mistake? I don't think so. It's going to be great, but the name is fantastic. And then we have a Dark Fallen Shadow, 3 mana, 3/3 undead with Rush, and then a Mana Thirst of 6, gain Reborn. So essentially you could have 6 attack worth of Rush when you play this, if you play it after that Mana Thirst effect. You could also use this with undead stuff. It seems okay. I don't know how much this gets included in stuff though. Maybe this could be included in something like that, Unholy Death Knight potentially, with that really kind of utilizes the undead effect, or you want the extra bodies for the corpses. But ultimately, I'm not sure if this is going to be used. I feel like we've kind of seen similar things that just really haven't been included in decks. Then we also got some Hunter cards, the few Hunter cards. Again, each class really only getting like 3 cards for this mini set. So let's take a look at these Hunter cards. You have the zombies, which amazing, amazing theme, amazing name. Definitely like, very on brand. It is a secret. So for Hunter, those secrets always cost 2. And it reads, secret after your opponent plays a minion. Summon 4 1/1 zombies to attack it. Really kind of interesting secret here. I think the kind of interesting thing that I'm looking at for this is, yes, your opponent can play something small to set this off, and it's going to die, to 1 or 2 of these zombies and leave you with a couple of 1/1s. But if they play something that's bigger, okay, I guess you're doing a little bit of damage to their minion, but it doesn't really do much else. If you are playing this, you do have to consider potential board space. If you don't have the board space for these zombies to actually come out onto the board, you kind of have some awkward, choices to make in that case. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this. It's kind of an interesting concept, and if you have the board space, if they play something that has 4 health or less, then their thing dies. But it could be used, could be, that was totally unintended pun, but we're sticking with it. I don't know how I feel about it. I think right now Hunter probably doesn't want to utilize this. All right, looking at the next one, Trinket Tracker. It's a 1 mana 1/1 undead with a battle cry, draw a 1-cost spell. This I think is actually pretty cool. Being able to have it as a battle cry, so you get that effect guaranteed, and drawing the 1-cost, drawing the 1-cost spell could be pretty good in some cases. I could see people trying this in something like Quest Hunter potentially, or even just if they want to, find some sort of like cheap spell. It doesn't work with secrets because those aren't 1-cost spells. It doesn't work with, like every every spell that Hunter is playing currently in a lot of the decks. So I'm really kind of curious to see where this lands. This might even be better in the future once we have like another expansion and there's potentially more spells there. But this one seems okay to me and might be added in a couple things, especially if there's like a little bit of resurgence of Quest Hunter for the next couple of months. And the last one here is Faithful Companions. You always got to have those companions for Hunter. 7 mana. Discover a beast from your deck and summon it. Mana Thirst of 10. Also summon a copy of it. This seems both very powerful and kind of slow. So I feel like we kind of have seen the spells similar to this for Hunter in the past be used, but they've been used a bit more fringe case. There was a little while where people were using heavier spells in Hunter, but you know, depending on how you build the deck, this could be an inclusion for sure. If people, I think even recently, people have still been using Big Beast Hunter or the like Renathal Big Beast Hunter. So this could get included in that deck to potentially discover some of those big beasts. And if you're going really late game, you could get a copy of it. I'm not totally convinced that people do just want to throw this in that deck right now, but maybe they tweak the deck a little bit and see what happens. King Crush, absolutely a fantastic choice for this. And King Crush is part of the core set, so people will have access to that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see people trying to do something with this, but I don't know how competitive this will be for standard. That's kind of my initial thinking there. And then finally, we have the several priest cards. So let's take a look at these here. Rotting Necromancer, a 4 mana, 5/4 undead, of course. Battlecry Dredge, and if it's in undead, deal 5 damage to the enemy hero. This seems pretty decent all around. It's cheap enough. You could probably drop this into the like undead Shadow Priest that people have been trying to play. It is an undead, so it can get potentially resummoned after it's been killed off. Again, that battle cry, you are going to get that effect, and Dredge seems pretty good. So I actually like this one personally. 5 damage to the enemy hero. As long as it's an undead, not always going to be a guarantee there, even if you have some stuff in, in the deck that's undead. So could get your damage. Might feel bad if you're specifically trying to aim for that and you don't hit that damage there. So it's definitely going to be one to try out, I think. The next one is Mind Seer, a shadow spell. 1 mana. Deal 2 damage to a minion, and if it dies, deal 3 damage to the enemy hero. So again, kind of looking like this could be something that people might want to run in like an aggressive shadow style priest deck. Dealing 2 damage, honestly, I think right now in the meta doesn't seem unrealistic to deal 2 damage to a minion and kill it off. So this could be some extra damage, for the face. The also kind of interesting thing I think about this card and why it might actually see a little bit more play than other cards is, especially if you are playing like an aggressive or even undead death rattle like focused priest deck. If you deal 2 damage to your own minion to kill it off for a death rattle effect, that would also work. And it does specifically state that it's just a minion, so you can't target but the damage, if it dies, goes specifically to the enemy hero. So pretty fantastic, I think there. I'm the type of player that I like that kind of more direct damage, being kind of aggressive. So this to me seems like a win-win card if you are doing a strategy like the aggro Shadow Priest. So that seems like a fun one. And lastly, we have Cannibalize, a 4 mana shadow spell. Destroy a minion, restore its health to all friendly characters. This one, again, it just says minions, so you could use this on your own minions, again, to trigger a death rattle or do something else if you have to, but you could use that to clear off one of your opponent's minions. And restoring its health to all friendly characters does include your hero. So 4 mana to potentially, remove a large minion from your opponent's board and heal your own face for that potentially high health seems pretty sweet. I like this one a lot. I think it probably fits into a couple of different decks. You might not necessarily run this in a more like aggro shadow deck, but I definitely think there are some uses for this here. I don't know if people start including it now. I'm kind of, wanting to see what decks people put together for Priest here. And I don't know, maybe people try to play this, or maybe it's just a discovered thing that's going to throw people off. But the added potential of some, healing that people may not have planned for, Priest seems to specialize in that for sure. So gonna be pretty interesting to see how this one is used. Again, not sure exactly where people want to just play this. I don't know if it just auto gets, dumped into like every Priest deck, but probably a couple. And again, after this mini set, the next thing that we will have is that next expansion in April-ish with a rotation. So some of these cards could become much better at that point after there is a shifting of what is leaving standard and new cards coming in at that point. Things like the quests and heroes all will be rotating out. At that point, maybe those become a bit more impactful. But what do you think of these cards? Are any of these cards something that you are excited to try out? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking this video out, and I will see you in the next one.